Hello and welcome. Today on the Bhagavatam, we're going to have a Q&A question. This is our spiritual wisdom podcast, ancient spiritual wisdom. And we'd love to know what you think. We'd love to know your questions. We'd love to know what you think about spirituality, what you think about life, what you think about the divine or God. What are your ideas? Does God have a name? Does God have a form? Does God have a partner? What is the purpose of spirituality? Why are we here? What is life all about? These are some of the questions we're going to cover today. And it's with your questions that we're going to bring this alive. So if you're in the live stream today, please feel free to ask questions. Please feel free to, just bring it all up front. Whatever you've had on your mind, whatever you've ever thought, this is the time. This is the time to bring it up. So let's see what we've got here. Okay, so someone's asking the question here about the Bhagavad Gita. How do the Vedas fit in? How do the Vedas fit into the Bhagavad Gita? I'm wondering. So let's start with that question. What are the Vedas? Veda is a word in Sanskrit which means knowledge. The Vedas are a series of ancient texts on which we've based this program. And the idea is really to tap into the ancient wisdom. Now, in today's time, we have a lot of stuff going on around spirituality, self-help, a lot of people who talk about their theories. But if you really dig deep, you'll find out that most of those theories are derived from the ancient Vedas. Most people haven't read them. Most people haven't a clue what that is. If you're curious about the origins of modern spirituality, or even religion, if you're wondering, where did Christ get his teachings from? Where did Muhammad get his teachings from? If you're wondering where Buddha got his teachings from, they're all from the Vedas. They didn't make up anything. These were ancient texts that were there thousands of years before any of these people came on the planet. Now, why would they go there? Because the Vedas were actually, just as you've come across in other texts that were revealed to people, the Vedas are also known as Shruti, that knowledge which is heard from within. Now, we all have this capability, and most of us don't realize it. We think that only some special people, some apostles, some other persons who are very highly evolved, only they can tap into this great wisdom that comes from the divine source or God. The truth is, every one of us has this capability. And great rishis and great sages in the past who perfected the art of meditation and quieting the mind, because that's the prerequisite to be able to listen to that inner voice, to that guidance that comes from the divine or God. That ability to quiet the mind is at the heart of all of this wisdom. The people who had mastered that art were known as rishis. Today's time we would just say saints, but rishis was someone who had mastered the yogic arts, mastered meditation, and learned how to perfectly control the mind and the senses. Now, why would one need to do that? Because the mind and the senses are constantly distracting us. They're constantly taking us from one subject to another, to another, to another, and there is no peace within us. So the ability to be able to master the senses, one who is known as master of the senses is called Goswami. Go meaning senses and Swami meaning master of. So these people who were the Goswamis or the rishis, they had mastered this art. We too can do the same thing by learning from them. This is not something new. It's not something that we need to, there are modern day spiritualists who will give it a name. They'll call it being present. They'll call it, mindfulness. They'll call it whatever else they may call it. Yes, these are just little labels given to ancient practices. The entire picture needs to be understood. Because the purpose of meditation is not just about being present to something. The purpose of meditation is really much deeper. It is to be able to understand who we are and what is the source of all of us, and what is the nature of the self, what is the nature of the divine. So I'm going to throw it again up to some more questions. I see some more people have been asking, so let's go here. Brock asks, I don't have questions that I know of. Okay, all right. And let's see, Silly. We just want everyone to join in with questions because this is Q&A today. So we've got lots of wonderful opportunity to bring your questions up front. By the way, even if you join in later on and in the YouTube, watching it later, feel free to put your questions in the comments. I will answer them. So I've got a question here from Seely asking, I have difficulty identifying with a name for God. I relate to a feeling more than a name. All right, so I think that's a very valid question. The feeling is definitely something some of us, many of us, I would say, have experienced. The feeling of what it is to be in the presence of something other than this world. Now, let me break this down for you. We've all had the experience of being in nature, and it feels wonderful, right? We've all had the experience of being in love, and it feels wonderful. We've all had the experience of something otherworldly, like the normal worldly stuff that goes on in our minds, in our lives, is chaotic. But when the chaos stops, when the mind becomes silent, when we become peaceful, we experience something that is truly of a different vibration. You see, there are two dimensions in front of us. There is the dimension created by our mind, and that by its very nature is chaotic and struggle and survival and suffering even. And then there is this other thing that happens when our mind is quiet. Wherever that has happened for you, however that has happened, you would have noticed that there is serenity, there is peace, there is a certain sense of joy, a feeling of upliftment. Because in fact, that's all there is. That is the nature of the universe. That is the nature of reality. But reality, perceived through our minds, gets distorted, completely distorted. It doesn't mean that there aren't events going on in the world that are not crazy. Of course there are. There are things that potentially can cause us great deals of suffering. Those things range from natural events. Let's say it's very hot or it's very freezing cold. Let's say it's something somebody said or somebody did. Let's say it's something that happened where you meet with an accident or you hurt yourself or burn yourself. Yes, there are definitely miseries that can be caused by nature, by other living beings, and by the body and mind. But as we learn to step into this other reality, by quieting the mind, by no longer being identified with the body, by no longer being identified with the world or our ego and what people think of us, we gradually come to a place where, as my little niece, who was 3 years old when she said this, she said, nothing matters. And I looked at her really amazed. I said, what do you mean nothing matters? But that's truly, she was speaking words of wisdom. And that wisdom is that we can come to a place, we are capable of this, of coming to a place where no matter what's going on, it doesn't faze us. Am I 100% there? Absolutely not. I get fazed, I get affected, but I also know how to bounce back because I've been practicing this for a long time, because I'm aware of these things. For most of us, that may or may not be possible. If you've been practicing anything that has to do with meditation, you would have found the ability to be able to steer your mind. If you've tried any kind of self-help or any kind of practices that have to do with spirituality, you may have learned some of that. But because it is the mind that ultimately determines whether you're going to be unhappy or happy, whether you're going to be free or tied down in the world. So Coming back to Seeli's question, she talks about identifying with the feeling, but doesn't know if there's a name for God. Well, the first question is, what is God? Is God an energy? Most people who are spiritual would say, yeah, God's the energy, God is the universe. But the universe is impersonal. What do you mean by that? Has something created everything? We need to address it from that question. If there is a cause of the creation, if you're willing to step away from the scientifically concocted idea that everything is just chance biochemical combination, and look at the fact that everything is so intricate and perfectly designed, the ecosystems of nature and the ecosystems within our body that are so perfectly designed, that there has to be some intelligence behind this design. If there is an intelligence, the question lies, is that intelligence impersonal, as in just an energy, or is it personal? That's the important question. If it is impersonal, the question arises, why can it not take a form if it chooses to? What if it chooses to be impersonal and personal, to be everywhere and yet somewhere? And if it chooses to be somewhere, can it have a form? And if it has a form, can it have a name? Try and understand the possibilities, because we often place limitations on what that source or God can be. We often put our own concoctions on there, and we say God is this bearded old man sitting in the clouds or some such thing, or sends people to hell. But what if that was not true? Because that's just our concoction. What if God was anything God wanted to be? Youthful, beautiful, powerful, fun-loving, joyous. Right? That's what the Vedas talk about. Krishna. Krishna meaning the all-attractive one. Akarshit, one who attracts everybody. That's the root word it comes from. And who attracts everyone, why? Through beauty, through his strength, through his wisdom. Not just his, but his and her. Because his partner and he are the same. Radha and Krishna, they are no different. Tomorrow, by the way, is Krishna's birthday. So God has a birthday. Now let's go deeper. So not only does God have a name, but God has a birthday. Not only does God have a birthday, but God has a partner. Not only does God have a partner, but God has beautiful activities, lila, pastimes, that he comes to show. 5,000 years ago, Krishna appeared in this world. Now you may say, well, how do I know this Krishna you're talking about is God? Well, good question. That's what the whole Bhagavad Gita is all about. Bhagavad Gita, or Song of God, is part of the Vedas. And it is there that Arjun asks all these questions to Krishna. Who are you? Krishna says, I am the source of all material and spiritual worlds. Everything emanates from me. The wise, knowing this, worship me with their heart. Nobody has ever said that. No one. No prophet, no messenger, no son, no guru. Nobody has ever been able to claim that. And having claimed that, Arjun then challenges Krishna. How do I know what you're saying is true? You say that everything comes from you. You say you're seated in everyone's heart. You say you are the origin of everything, the source of everything. You are unlimited. And yet I see a form in front of me, of a being, of a person just like me. And then Krishna shows him what is called the Virat Roop, the universal form, in which he shows the entire universe within a gigantic form that is said to stretch from the earth to the sky. And within that form, he shows him not only all the universes, but also time, past, present, and future. He shows him everything. And then Arjuna is like, okay, I get it. Can you please come back in that lovely form of yours? You were my friend. I enjoy relating to you like that. I can't relate to this. So I hope that answers your question, Seeli. And remember this, it's not just about God having a name. God can have millions of names. Shakespeare said it beautifully. He said, a rose by any other name would smell as sweet. So yeah, if you think you have a different name for God, you want to call God your beloved, You want to call God by any other name? Please feel free to go ahead. If you think Joe's a better name for God, go ahead. But just know that the great sages and rishis referred to him as Krishna. It was said, Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam, that you are Bhagavan. Krishna is Bhagavan, meaning the original source of everything. All right, let's see what else we got. So Tameka asks, do you believe that what we go through externally is a reflection of our internal or spiritual struggles? You're absolutely right, Tameka. What we go through externally, our life, is a reflection of what's going on within us. It is a reflection of what we believe. It is a reflection of where we're at in our spirituality. I've seen this again and again. I've seen the very things that, for example, throw it out, very things that, let's say, I dislike, or I hate, or I resist, or I avoid. Those very things show up in my life. They show up. Yeah. If you don't like a certain thing about a certain person, or you don't like people who are a certain way, you'll have to deal with them. If you don't like any particular thing, it will show up in your life. I've seen people who hated their parents, and when they became parents, they became just like their parents. So sometimes it shows up outside, and sometimes it shows up inside. Sometimes very often it happens that you become the very thing you hated or disliked. You didn't like the way somebody talked to you, and you judged them, and you criticized them, and you made fun of them. Well, then in a little while, it starts to happen that you're starting to behave like them. Interesting, isn't it? And much of what we see outside in our life is a projection of what's going on inside of our consciousness. Our consciousness creates our reality. It's not just our thoughts, but it's our thoughts, our desires, our likes and dislikes, our actions, our karma. All of that combined together forms our consciousness, our state of mind. That in turn generates our reality. So where's your consciousness at? When you see things show up in your reality that you don't like, instead of pointing at others, instead of blaming people or the weather or God or anything else, go back inside. Take a look at yourself. Maybe there's something here you need to work on. Maybe there's something here that you've been avoiding or resisting or hating or disliking. The very things we avoid keep showing up. It's uncanny. But that's how the world was designed. It was designed to be a mirror to ourselves, for us to see who we are, to see what's inside us. So the more we turn within, the more we become self-aware, the more we start to grow. Then you realize that it's not about blaming yourself. It's not about this is my fault, my problem. No. It's about recognizing that it's here. See, think about a projector. A projector projects onto the screen. The screen is the world. The projector is in your mind. Whatever film you put into the projector is going to show up on the screen. So now, what's going on in your mind? If there's nothing going on in your mind, well then nothing of any significance is going to show up either. Things are going to be pretty calm and peaceful. That means in your mind doesn't mean just for a moment. It means in your heart, in your desires, in your karma. It means in all of that. We need to come to that place. That is the place of equanimity. That is the place of deep inner stillness. Tameka asks, do you believe God and Spirit is one? Is that voice within us God and Spirit? Yes, absolutely. Absolutely right. You see, that's just another name. You call it Spirit, you call it universe, you call it God. It really doesn't matter. I know people have been really turned off by the word God. And I like to go back and take the very things that we have resisted or run away from or avoided because, yeah, I know people have polluted that word. People have taken that word and God made it mean all kinds of horrible things. Frankly, if God was a God who sends people to hell and who punishes them because they do something that he doesn't want them to do, I too wouldn't believe in God. But to me, that's not what God is. God, the universe, source, whatever name you're trying to give it, is the most incredible being of all. Everything that we've desired in our life, everything, is because we have a remembrance of God. Like, let's say you're looking for your perfect mate, right? You look for a person who has this quality and that quality. Some of that is socially ingrained, but at the end, you're looking for a deep love. Think about all the things that you look for at the deepest level. A deep love. You look for someone who is beautiful. You look for someone who is strong. You look for someone who is wealthy. You look for someone who is powerful. You look for someone who is knowledgeable. God is all of that. It is said that in the Vedas that God is known by 6 qualities. One who possesses all knowledge. So they don't use the word God. Clearly, that's an English word. The way you use the word Bhagavan. Bhagavan means one who possesses all knowledge, means knows everything. All fame is known everywhere by everyone, whether you hate God or love God, whether you're an atheist or you're a believer, or whether you're a spiritualist, doesn't matter. You still know what that means. Has all strength, can do anything. All knowledge, all strength, all beauty. All renounced, completely detached from everything. Right? All wealth, owns everything. So in this way, we need to understand God beyond these limited ideas that our religions have given us. And I don't mean any one religion, I mean all religions combined together. The Vedas are designed by people who want to have an experience of God, not just a bookish knowledge. This is not about just reading some books. It's not just about believing something. Belief can only take you so far. It's about having an experience within yourself. That experience begins with our perception of nature and the universe around us. But it also begins as you meditate and go deeper within yourself. So they say there's 3 ways to know God. God is known as the energy of the universe. Then God is present within all of us. And finally, God is present as a being. To deny any of those possibilities, to say that God is only a being but cannot be everywhere. Because if God is somewhere, then God cannot be everywhere. That's a misnomer. God is somewhere and everywhere simultaneously. God is somewhere, everywhere, and within every being, every one of us. And you say, that's impossible. Absolutely right. You and I couldn't do that. But that's the very definition of God. And once you understand that, then, it's very easy to say, okay, if there is such a being, then what is the nature of that being? I'd like to know more. And that's what we explore here. Okay, let's go back to Celie. You had a question here as well. All right, let me bring it up. During a spiritual vision long ago, I turned to the entity that took and returned me to Earth. I asked him his name before vanishing. Telepathically, I heard, this is not important, the experiences. And you know what? At that point in time, that may have been true. And for all points in time, if that's what matters, ultimately it is the experience that is the most important thing. But here's an important part to understand, something further. Because, there's knowledge we have at a particular time. Like, for example, if a first grade student asked you about Shakespeare, you'd say, no, I think it's best you learn your ABCs and stuff like that first, right? There are different stages in our spiritual growth. And yes, at one point in time, and initially, it's the experience that matters. Ultimately, it is always the experience that matters, the experience of God. But if you want to go deeper, if you want to go much deeper, like if you want to, okay, let's put it like this. If you want to know somebody, then you start off by saying, hey, what's your name? And then you say, what do you do? Right? What do you try to understand their characteristics, their activities, what are they all about? You listen to their story. And that's the same thing with God. You try to understand what God is through understanding both the name and pastimes of God and teachings as well. And by doing that, you get a deeper understanding of God. The other thing to understand is that the name of God is no different than God. And therefore, that has been emphasized in so many different religions as well. The truth is that if by chanting a particular word, let's say I was to chant Joe, 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 I wouldn't get the experience of Joe. If I chanted the name of some other person, some friend of mine, let's say Jane, and I chant Jane, 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 I'm not going to get the experience of Jane. But if I chant Krishna, and I've done this, you get the experience of God. There's a mantra, Hare Krishna mantra. You chant that mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. That's one of many mantras, but it is a very powerful mantra. By chanting the mantra, you have an experience of God. And you can do it not only a few times, you can do it hundreds of times, you can do it thousands of times, you can do it for the rest of your life and never get bored of it. It will always have another dimension that will reveal itself to you. So that's the power of the name of God. And likewise, the form of God is a form that you can meditate on in temples in India as well as around in the West as well. They've created many Indian temples. There are forms of Radha and Krishna, and you can meditate on the form. So this is a way of engaging your senses, your eyes, your ears, your mouth, your tongue. And then you can eat prasadam, food that is offered to God. So if you're near a temple, tomorrow is Krishna's birthday, go and check it out. See how people celebrate. See how people celebrate the birth of Krishna. It's amazing. You'll enjoy it. Check it out for yourself. Tameka asks another lovely question. Do you believe we can talk to God through sound? I 100% believe that we can talk to God through our minds, through sound, but there's a catch. You can talk all you want, but if you want to listen to God, then you need to be quiet. You know, when someone's talking, we keep quiet, right? So we can't be both talking at the same time. So when you want to listen to someone, you silence yourself and you listen. In much the same way, we need to silence not just our mouth, but we need to silence our mind. The Bible has a very interesting statement. It says, be still and know that I am God. What does that mean? It means that when your mind is still, you will have a deep knowing of God. You will experience God. You will realize God. You will be able to listen to God. You can ask any question and then be quiet. You'll find the answers start to come to you. Be important that you know the difference between answers that come from your mind and answers that come from a higher source. I've spent years writing in that state of meditativeness, listening to that inner voice, communing with God. It is the most powerful thing I've ever done. I found that it has changed me from the inside out. It's almost like that wisdom, that knowledge goes deep and penetrates it. Because, you know, when you read something, then only 10% of that knowledge goes in, because it has to filter through the mind, and the mind accepts certain things, rejects certain things. So if you go to a workshop or if you read a book, it's all being filtered. And whatever you agree with, whatever you think resonates with you, that little bit goes in to some degree. And even then, it's very hard to act on. But when you're in a meditative state and you're then listening, your mind is quiet and still and open, then that information literally writes itself within you. And when it writes itself within you, it starts to become part of who you are through your subconscious. And at that point, it changes you from within. Therefore, one who can truly listen will evolve rapidly And that's why we say the first step is to learn how to quiet your mind. It is the most important thing if you want to advance spiritually. It's not about, spirituality is not about just reading some books, going to some workshops, being in astrology, crystals, this, that, or the other. No, 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 no. It begins with quieting the mind. That is why the word mantra, man means mind and tra means to free yourself from the mind. So we use mantra. One of the most basic ones is Om. The other are mantras like the Hare Krishna mantra or the Gayatri mantra. They're different mantras. But it's said that in this time that we live in, the Kali Yuga, this age of quarrel, hypocrisy, and dissension that we live in right now, Harer Nama Eva Kevalam, that the name of Krishna, the name of Hari, is most powerful. You may use it or not. It's up to you. I've seen the effects. I've seen how powerful it is in cleansing the heart, in cleansing the mind, in helping you gain control over your mind. Because ultimately, to take charge of a certain frequency, you need a higher frequency. The higher frequency is the frequency of the soul, the frequency of God. That can take charge of your mind in a way that no mental effort can. Like you can struggle, to have a positive attitude and to be, motivated and all that kind of stuff. But that's the mind trying to deal with the mind. And most psychology is the mind trying to deal with the mind. But when you have a higher force, spirit, soul, God, that frequency being now used to control the mind, to put it in its place, to calm it down, then things work very miraculously. All right, let's see.
Rohit?
Yeah, you have a question, I think, Swati.
I do, but unless you want to continue on this theme, because I may be digressing a little bit. I wanted to talk about Kal Yuga and the times we are in now. Did you want to continue with the
No, go ahead. What's your question?
So here's the thing. I was just discussing this with a good friend of mine and contemplating on this, because on one level we say it is the Kali Yuga, and in the Western world they say it's the collective dark night of the soul, where dark energies or just dark tendencies get darker, right? And which is so scary, right? And in the Indian tradition they say it's Ghor Kali Yuga, so it's like Kali Yuga at its peak, and it's going to get worse from here for things to get better. But then there's this another school of thought, because I study a lot of like this esoteric sciences and new age things. I follow them, and there's also another train of thought, or not a thought, but this is something that's actually happening, that we're all shifting as beings, right? We're also ascending into the fifth dimension, like whatever that means, right? Like where we're moving into the Aquarian age, we're moving into the fifth dimension, which, when I focus on that, I'm like, oh, there's so much hope, and, things are going to change for the better. So it's like, how do you, is it both amplifying of the, of the light and the dark, or do you see it as being more chaos or more order, or chaos that will give rise to order? Like I was just pondering over.
So Swati, your stuff's really great, because yes, the modern day people have lots of ways of putting it: fifth dimension, sixth, seventh, whatever, age of Aquarius, all these different things. It's absolutely right. This is what they talk about. But the fact of the matter is, 5,000 years ago in the Vedas, they said both things, both these things that were talked about exactly. Yeah.
Right.
And what they were saying was, there's going to be a deterioration of the consciousness of people. So you're going to see people becoming more and more degraded, going further and further away from true spirituality and God. Yes, they'll concoct all kinds of things. Yes, they'll come up with all kinds of stuff. But the bottom line is that as there is this, shall we call it, move towards darkness, there is also a move towards the light. Because in this age, things being as difficult as they are, being as dark as they are, you know how difficult it is for us to even control our minds, for even to silence our mind for a few moments.
I know,
right?
Yeah.
So given that, there have been tools given to us that will help us in this time. So it's really important to understand that those tools are working, they're viable tools. Like in ancient times in India, for example, rishis would sit and meditate for thousands of years, and they lived that long. Now we don't.
Right.
And the fact of the matter is that not only do we not live, but we absolutely cannot do what they were
Right.
doing, right? Sit in
Yeah.
forests, like kings would go and leave their palaces and go to the forest to meditate, and they'd be there for many years and reach a place of samadhi where, they were in trance and they were like deep connection with the divine, and they'd go into this altered, it's just completely incredible stuff. So now the point is, we're not able to do that in today's time. However, to balance and counterbalance all the negative effects of the times we live in, we have been given a lot of blessings. It is said that even people
Right.
from all kinds of planets take birth on Earth, even those who are in
Sure.
more fantastic
Yeah.
and incredible heavenly planets, as they call it in the Vedas. They come and take birth on the earth because this is the most incredible
Yeah.
time for spiritual advancement. So everything you're saying has been said. It's true.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And
And
it's
we talk
there.
about these indigo children and crystal children
Yes.
coming and like
Yes.
raising the vibration of the earth, where,
Yes.
we'll move towards vegetarianism and things like that,
Yes.
sustainable farming, vegetarianism.
Yes.
And
All of
I
that is
think
starting to
those
come in.
are, yeah, it's so beautiful, but
Right.
it's just confounding, right? Like the
But the
things going
ways,
from
yeah, but the
backwards
point
and
is that when
progressive.
they come in
Yeah.
here, you need to
Yeah.
know the pathways. And this is why I do this channel and this is why I do these talks, because people are seeking a way. Now, we can concoct ways, we can come up with ways, but are they effective? And by what yardstick will we measure the efficacy of a certain way? Let's say if someone is any of those things you talked about, an indigo child or whatever names we want to give it, right? Okay, fine. And they came here. But let's say they came from different planets. But the point is, if they want to advance spiritually and what is the goal of spirituality, that needs to be clear. And most people aren't clear about that. The Vedas make it very clear. The goal is moksha. Moksha means
Right.
liberation. What is liberation? Freedom. Freedom from what? Freedom from karma. Freedom from the cycle of birth and death. Freedom begins with freedom from your mind. You see how that is where it begins. And because now, once you're free of your mind and you're free of your karma and you're free of the sufferings of this world, now you're already living in heaven right here on earth. You have the evidence and the proof here. It's not like you have to go somewhere to get it. And then by the time you leave this body, Krishna says in the Gita, he says, wherever and whatever your mind is fixed upon at the time of leaving this body, you will attain to that state. So if your mind is attached to worldly things, you'll come right back. But if your mind is
Right.
fixed on God, you will go to God. So it's not about a belief system, it's a shift in consciousness that has to occur. So no matter what
Right.
we're talking about, whether we're talking about people rising in their consciousness, we're talking about different dimensions, people coming from different places, all that is good. But they've come
Right.
for a purpose, which is moksha, liberation, freedom. And
I
for
see.
that freedom, there's a process that has been given to us by the great sages and rishis, the wise people that lived in ancient times who could foresee this time coming. I've not seen any of these spiritual teachers that talk about all these ones. They give you different wonderful tools, maybe for healing. They'll give you all this kind of
Yeah.
stuff. But healing is very different than liberation. You
For
see,
sure.
you're
Yeah.
trying to heal, let's say, your mind, your past, your karma. You're trying to heal certain things, right? Your body.
Yeah.
Fine. But what
Yeah.
about the evolution of your soul, the real purpose behind spirituality, right? I
Right.
tend to think of spirituality as spirit actuality, which is that you
Yeah.
start to move in the direction of actualizing your spiritual nature, right? So
Uh-huh.
as to move in that direction, because once our goal is clear, then we
Yeah.
understand whether something is supporting that goal or not. There are many things that are interesting and are very appealing to us, and we might enjoy them, and they might even feel good, and they might really work, and they might even help us. I'm not saying we need to deny any of that, but
Right.
I'm saying we need to keep our focus clear. What is the intent of our spirituality? All right, let me take up some more questions that I have here. Got lots of them
Thank
coming
you.
in. Thank you so much for your lovely questions. All right, let me go back a moment. Okay, this one's from Brock. Are there schools or groups to help teach us how to silence our mind? I'm finding it difficult to focus, but would like to build my ability. Where is the best place to start? You know, Brock, I'm going to give you a tool that I've been offering to people. I put up a course on my YouTube channel. It's called Spiritual Wisdom Channel, or you can type in my name, Rohit Juneja, at Rohit Juneja. And once you get there, look for the playlist called Mind on a Leash. It's a good place to start. It's not the actual process. It's just a preamble to meditation. And as far as meditation goes, yes, there are many processes, I will admit, they all have benefits. Whether you want to be mindful or whether you want to do, any other kind of mantra, I have seen that chanting the names of God is the most powerful meditation in the age of Kali, in this time that we live in. Why is it so powerful? Because it is, as I said earlier, the name of the divine is no different than the divine itself. It's the same energy. And therefore, it is so highly charged and powerful. So by chanting the name Krishna, you become Krishnized. It's like when you put an iron rod in fire, that iron rod now becomes like fire. It starts to glow and has the same heat as fire. So when you are in the association or you're in communion with the divine, with God, then you start to develop those godly qualities within yourself. It's not something that will happen overnight. It takes time. But as you practice and as you develop, you'll find that that you will get further and further on this path. It's amazing how well it works. And for those who have done it, you will see that they've made immense progress. There are others who like to chant and meditate on the word Om. That's fine too. Krishna says, I am the syllable Om in the Vedic mantras. He says this in the Bhagavad Gita. And that's also his name. So if you chant Om, then learn how to chant it. It's A-U-M, Aum. There's a way of chanting it. And in that way, again, you can gain great peace within yourself. So there are many processes, but these are some that were recommended by some of the most evolved people on our planet. Test them out for yourself. Do not believe me. Do not believe them. Test it. Try it for yourself. Experiment. And then you'll see the outcome. The process in the Vedas, in the Vedic wisdom, is very scientific. There is theory, there is the experiment that you'll do, and then there's the conclusion you'll arrive at. You do not need to believe anything. Okay, let's see. There's some more questions here. Got another one here. Can you describe spiritual evolution? Human, ascended master, to demigod, merge with God, becoming as God. Okay, lovely. So there are different paths on the path of spiritual evolution. Spiritual evolution is not about healing. Let's get very clear about this. Healing is important. I'm not going to dismiss that. Healing is important for your mind. Healing is important for your body. Healing is important even for your karma. Yes, healing can help. However, if you're looking at spiritual evolution means a shift in consciousness. It's much deeper. That shift in consciousness is there are certain symptoms of what it looks like to have shifted in consciousness. And I mentioned it earlier, and I'll just repeat for you. The way you get to know how much you're evolving spiritually is how identified you are with spirit. Right now, we're all identified with our mind and our body, particularly with our ego, right? And so someone calls you bad names, or someone insults you, somebody does something that hurts you. We get bothered, we get affected. We get affected when it's hot. We get affected when it's cold. So we get affected by the world. To the degree that you are no longer affected, to the degree that you have become detached from your mind, from the world, from people, to the degree that things do not affect you, or as my niece had said, nothing matters, to that degree you will know that you are spiritually evolving. And the ultimate stage, Krishna points out in the Bhagavad Gita, he says that you will experience that all creatures, whether you're looking at a dog, or you're looking at a murderer, or you're looking at a thief, or you're looking at a saintly person, that all beings are the same. You will experience all things as the same, whether you have gold or money, or whether you have dirt. You will experience all things as the same. How will that happen? Because you will see the energy, you will see the presence of the divine in everything and everyone. These are some of the symptoms that are talked about in the Bhagavad Gita. Not only will your mind be quiet, but your perception will change. Your perception and your reaction will change. This is the power of spiritual evolution. This is how you know that you're actually evolving. See, without any standard, anybody can say anything is spiritual evolution. It's better to hear from the source. It's better to understand what the symptoms are. Those symptoms have been tremendously talked about in the Bhagavad Gita, and then in the Bhagavatam, which we've been discussing over the last, I don't know if it's a year or 2 years, we've been going over the Bhagavatam since we finished the Bhagavad Gita. And all those episodes are there in the playlist that I've put up on my website, on my YouTube channel. If you want to catch up from the beginning, for those of you that have just come, there's a whole library of episodes that you can catch up. And I would suggest starting with the Bhagavad Gita, and then coming to the Bhagavatam. So, but within all of that, they talk of all these highly evolved beings who then explain to us what spiritual advancement is, what spiritual evolution is. And it's for that reason that we dive into these texts, because without a standard, we're lost. We're just thinking everything's, it's like saying, I want to be able to, let's say, get a degree. I want to master, let's say, some subject, let's say technology, but I'm just going to do it through some online course. I'm going to do, but that course is not accredited. That course is not, something that's necessarily accurate. Somebody concocted a course. Yeah, you learn something, but you won't necessarily learn that which is, let's say, Microsoft accredited, right? Or Apple accredited, or whatever. You will learn something, but not necessarily the way the originators, the creators of that program wanted you to learn. I don't know if that makes any sense, but let's see. How does that sound for you? Oh yeah, Celia, you asked about moving from human to ascended master to demigod to merging with God or becoming as God. Okay, great. Yes, there are different stages. So as we evolve spiritually, we will move in our lifetimes to different states. Perhaps as you said rightly, perhaps as ascended master, or as a master who may be right here on earth. Some are right here on earth trying to help others. Others go to other planets. Some become demigods. Demigods are people who are in charge of the universe, affairs of the universe, and in managing things that go on within this universe. God doesn't personally manage all of that. A lot of people think God does everything. God doesn't do anything. If you were the CEO of a company, you're not out there doing everything yourself. You've delegated everything. It makes sense. And that's why in the Vedas they talk not just of God, they talk about demigods. All these names you've heard, from Ganesh to Durga to Parvati to all the different demigods you've heard about in what is called Hinduism. Some people say there's 33 million demigods in Hinduism, and what kind of religion is this? No, there aren't 33 million gods. There are 33 million demigods. If you had an entire universe and galaxies that had to be organized and managed, you'd need that many people. You consider that we have trillions of galaxies. Yeah, you would need that many managers to take care of the universal affairs. And so they are basically managers, the demigods. They are highly evolved beings like you. They're beings like you and I, but who have evolved tremendously spiritually and are now given these tasks. And while managing these tasks, it's very important for them to be able to stay balanced and equipoised and spiritual. And very often they lose it. Very often there are stories in the Vedas about Indra, who's considered the king of the demigods, and how he loses it. He totally loses it, gets angry, gets volatile, gets reactive. Yeah. So we are tested at every level, whether we are a human, an ascended master, or a demigod. We are being tested to see whether we stay aligned with spirit or not, whether we stay true to ourselves or not. True to ourselves doesn't mean that we are true to our desires. We're true to our personality. No, that's not the self we're talking about. We're talking about the spiritual self. We're talking about ourself as spirit, our soul. How true are we to the nature of our soul? That is what matters. And the day that we are completely aligned with our soul, acting from, thinking from, living from our soul, and that soul is then connected to the divine, we are now finally in the place for liberation. Okay, so beyond the demigods, you're asking a further question. What happens next? What is that stage in which we're actually free from this world? Do we merge with the divine? Do we become the divine? These are very important questions. And all of them are possible. There are many who would like to merge with the divine, who would like to become one with God, who would like to become as God. Let me explain. So, as the Vedas talk about it, you will move from the physical world into the non-physical world, and that is referred to as the spiritual world, also known as Vaikuntha or Brahma Jyoti. So, in other words, to the light. Brahma means the divine, and Jyoti means light, to the divine light. You can either merge with that divine light, or within that light, there are numerous planets. Within those planets are forms of Vishnu. You can go there and you can have a form just like Vishnu. So you can have a God-like form. You're still not God. You have some, this is called Sarupya Mukti. You will have a liberation where you have a form like God. You will have the nature like God. But you need to stay true to that. Now, beyond all of that is the land that is referred to as Goloka. Goloka is the land of Krishna. That is considered the highest spiritual planet. Why is it the highest? And why is Krishna considered the highest of all? Because on that planet, in that spiritual planet, by the way, spiritual planets means that there is no birth, there is no death, there is no old age, and there is no disease. We live in our spiritual form. Okay? You can either merge with the light, or you can go to one of these spiritual planets and have a spiritual form. A spiritual form is not subject to the same things that a material form is subjected to. It is an eternal form. It is an eternally youthful form. And it is not subject to any kind of the miseries of this world. Now, when you go there, there's two ways to relate to God. One way to relate to God is, God is great, I am small. That is to say, there is awe and reverence. That is the case in the Vaikuntha planets, where people are with Vishnu. But when you go to Goloka, which is the highest planet in the spiritual world, there is no more separation, as in to say, it is not that God is great, it is that we have an intimate relationship with God. So now think about this. When you have someone who's very powerful, let's say the president of the country or a judge, let's take a judge, who's sitting there passing judgment, and everybody says, Your Honor, and they speak with great respect, and they dare not, try to in any way insult the judge or whatever, or be too formal. I mean, too friendly or too casual. They have to speak with a lot of etiquette. So that's what happens when you have a formal relationship. But when you have an intimate relationship, that very judge, that very CEO of the company, that very president, when they're back home with their grandchildren or children, let's say grandchildren, they're probably an older person. So those children will be climbing on that person's shoulders or on their back, or they're maybe, on all fours while their kid is sitting on the back. They're playing horse like they're a horse. That's intimacy for you. With that partner, they're hugging and kissing, right? That's intimacy. So that's the kind of intimacy with God that is found in Goloka. Goloka is the planet of Krishna. And there you have this incredible intimacy. And when Krishna comes to this world, as he came 5,000 years ago, and if you wish to read about his stories, look up the Krishna book. It's spelled Krsna. You'll find it on Amazon. Krsna. They've broken it down from Sanskrit like that, but whatever. You'll find his stories, and you'll find in those stories the kind of relationships that he had with people while he was here. He was coming here to show us what it's like to be with God. And there you see his mother chasing him with a stick, loving him dearly, but at times getting mad at him, at times tying him up because he's so mischievous. You must read those stories. They're incredible. It talks about Krishna's birth. When Krishna is born, his parents are worried. Oh my God. Because his parents were captured by this King Kans. The king had been told that the son of his parents, that his parents' child would kill the king. So the king was really worried. It's hard to explain the whole thing in such a short time. But anyway, when Krishna was born as a little baby, they said, oh my God, he's going to kill you. And then he showed them his form as Vishnu. He says, no. Don't worry about that. I've got this under control. And at that point, all the guards of the jail were made to fall asleep, and the doors opened, and his father was able to get out and take Krishna to a safe place, and then he came back again. But those stories about Krishna's birth and his activities are incredible. And as you read them, you'll begin to understand that so much is possible with God. That intimate, loving relationship. We all seek that. We all want that. And we're trying to find it in this world and failing. We look for the ultimate partner. We look for the ultimate love. We look for the ultimate... And we never really quite get there. Like, it seems great for a little while, and then suddenly we're disappointed and we're hurt and all of that. But if you realize that the ultimate love of your life is actually God, and if you develop a love affair with God, that's what we're here to talk about, how to get there.
That's a beautiful analogy, Rohit. Thank you so much. The analogy you gave about the judge and, how others would talk to them, but the loved ones and children and grandchildren have a totally different equation with I'm jealous now, it makes you jealous.
Yes,
right?
That was very helpful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was beautiful.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions?
Oh yeah, I have been. I did download the Krishna book on my Kindle, and
Yes.
Just a second perspective in addition to what Rohit is saying. I love reading that book, and it's like very, things written in very simple English and very short chapters. And I usually read a chapter or two every day, and it's just beautiful. I love that book.
It's an incredible meditation, to read
really
about the pastimes of Krishna.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things someone said was, oh, but there's all these demons and he's killing them and all that stuff. And it's just horrible.
Yeah.
But what Krishna is showing through all of that is that no matter what happens to you, I will protect you. I will take care of you. That's his promise in the Bhagavad Gita. He says, give up all your religions, all of them. Give up your dharma, your duties, your responsibilities, all your worries. Give it up. and surrender unto me. I will free you from all karma, and I will give you liberation, moksha, freedom from suffering. That is my promise. That's the conclusion of the Bhagavad Gita. That's what he's doing, and that's what you start to see over there. What does it mean to be free? So, for example, Krishna's friends in the Krishna book, you'll see, are fearless. They're not worried. If something comes along that's going to kill them, they're like, Krishna's there. He'll take care of us. And he does, again and again and again. And that's really the point behind it. Because when a great being comes, there are many who are envious and jealous. As you see in the case of Christ, they became so envious of him and what he was teaching, because he was teaching about love of God. And so they killed him, right? And when Krishna came, all the more so. He was at the highest frequency. There were so many who then swarmed and tried to kill him. They couldn't. They absolutely couldn't. And not only that, I mean, it would appear many times that that they were going to harm his loved ones. And even there, he protected them. So I think it really helps in our spirituality to know that God is not just formless, because it's very hard to relate to something formless. Like, how do you relate to something that you can't have no name for? How do you relate to something that has no form? How do you fall in love with someone you know nothing about? If you say to love God, that's the whole point of spirituality. Great. How do I fall in love with someone I know nothing about? Like, tell me something. If you were to go on a date, all right, and there was somebody incredible out there, your perfect person, your soulmate, whatever name you want to give it, right? But you don't know that person's name. You don't know that person's, how to contact that person. You don't know what they do. You don't know anything about them other than that they exist. How would you fall in love with such a person? It would be impossible. But that's the problem with most religions. They tell you that this is what you need to do, is to love God with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your soul. Wonderful. But what next? Can you tell me more about God? They have nothing more to say, unfortunately. They will tell you this, that how to live and what to do and what not to do. Great, that's wonderful. Nothing wrong in that. But how do I get to the heart of the subject, the heart of the point of following that whole system? How do I fall in love with God? Right? And for those who want to merge with God, well, all right, but what are you going to do after you merge? Let's say you become one with God. Now what are you going to do? You're not going to be God. You're just going to merge, like a drop of water goes into the ocean. It merges with the ocean. It no longer exists. Now you've annihilated yourself from existence. Is that a great achievement? I don't know. Not to me. It doesn't appeal to me. Not at all. It is a way of becoming free from suffering. Yes, absolutely. But I'd like to know what comes next. So if someone's freed from the jail, but what's life like after jail? Right? Wouldn't you like to know? Like, after you get out of jail, what do you get to do? Like, you're in this world, you're sort of imprisoned by your body, you're imprisoned by your senses, you're imprisoned by your mind. Once you're free of all of that, you're free of karma, you're out of this world, what happens next? I personally believe I'd like to have a wonderful life after that. I'd believe that freedom is not something that's just about annihilating the self and merging with the divine. It doesn't appeal to me. If it does to you, great. I mean, Krishna has asked that question in the Bhagavad Gita. He's asked, which is better? Is it better, the yogic process of merging with the divine? Or is it better, the devotional process, bhakti, of having a relationship with the divine? Krishna says both are best. You go whichever way you want to go. But he says, those who surrender unto me, I pick them up from the ocean of birth and death and bring them back to me. I help them. The yogic process of trying to merge with the divine, you're on your own. It's what you want. What does God want? What does that which created you want? We need to ask that. Not what do I want, but what do you want? And if you ask, what do you want? You'll find out, I want to love you. I want to have a relationship with you. I want to hold you in my arms. And that is what's missing. That's what we're seeking. In our heart of hearts, that's what we're seeking. We're seeking God. When you seek happiness, when you seek love, when you seek joy, when you seek freedom, you're seeking God. All right, let's see again. Anything else? How are we doing so far? All right, I think we'll end here. Thank you all for being here, and we'll continue from next week with the Bhagavatam. For those of you that are new, please try and go through the playlist on the Bhagavad Gita first, and then the Bhagavatam. I've done all the different cantos. We're on the 5th canto now and moving further. But you're welcome to join us live anytime. We're here every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Pacific time. Actually, we start about 7:05, and that's Pacific time, or 10 p.m. Eastern time. And if you're in India, then it's, I think, 7:30. Anyway, it does change with daylight savings time, so I don't want to put that out there. But if you're really interested, then get on the mailing list. Either if you're right now on the Zoom chat, go ahead and put your email address, and I'll add you to the mailing list. So you'll get reminded every Tuesday that we're on. I'm sure that if you like this kind of conversation, you'll be there. Typically, the way it goes is we read from the Bhagavatam, I explain many things, and I take the question and answer later on. This was a rare chance where we got to just have a Q&A. So, and maybe we'll do this once in a while. So, all right, take care. Have a wonderful night, and I will see you next week. Hare Krishna. Jai Shri Krishna.